when I went to a summer school in Cape Town, organized by the London School of Economics and the University of Cape Town. Right. The outline of the presentation, my outline is first to give a background about poverty, what is the meaning of poverty, and also we'll try to link the potential link between poverty and some type of violence, which are terrorism, crime, riot, and civil war. Right, the introduction of poverty. As we know, many countries, or many poor countries, are facing tremendous challenges, such as an increase in the poverty ratio, high unemployment rate, an increase in the violence. Right? So, what is the definition of poverty? According to a Nobel Prize in economics called Sen, he defined poverty as the lack of capabilities or capabilities deprivation. And Sen actually insisted that poverty is not only about the lack of income. Sen sees income as a mean, as a resources to achieve some basic needs that people want to achieve in life. So, in his capability approach, that is the theory that Sen came up with, he said that capability approach focus on primary social good and on utility equality. So for him, a society should be judged according to the worst of situation of the citizen. It should be judged according to the well-off of the worst people in the society. And as I say, the capability approach now focuses on the need for certain goods to allow people to be capable of achieving some basic need that we call functioning or outcome. All right, and the capability approach focuses on what income does, how does it allow to achieve certain things, rather than the lack of income, as advocated by John Rawls. Right? And violence, we know there are different types of violence that I actually talked about. And the main objective of this presentation is to show some positive link or some evidence on the link between the two concepts. And also I've assumed that the causality is from poverty to violence, although they may have a reverse causality. Right, the two main theories behind or on the relationship between poverty and violence has been suggested by Baker, a researcher, who said that people engage into poverty because of two theories. The first one, he talked about the low opportunity cost, and the second one is about the weakness of the state. All right? The law of opportunity cost, that's what I'm going to talk about first, and then we'll also see some evidence on the weakness of the state. From an economic point of view, opportunity cost is actually the best alternative for goal when everybody is making a choice. So based on that theory, Baker, in his research on a paper published about crime and punishment, he actually asked a sample of people to decide between parking illegally and being late for work. Then the majority of respondents were willing to park illegally, then arriving late. So the question is, why? The answer is perhaps the guys have they have the two opportunities. They have the opportunity of arriving late and the opportunity of parking illegally. For them, arriving on time at the cost of being late is better, because the cost of arriving late is higher. So they face a low opportunity cost of engaging into crime. I don't know if it is clear, or should I repeat again once again? Right? So people become criminal because their opportunity costs are low. Their legal opportunities are worse than the illegal opportunities. So that therefore people, poor people specifically, they tend to engage into poverty. Engage into violence because of that. And then based on this research, on the argument, it is more evident that poor people are more likely to commit crime. I have a video about some gangsters in South Africa, just to show about this low opportunity cost. I'm sorry, my volume is very... So this guy is a criminal in a very dangerous area of Johannesburg called Ilbro. So this guy is actually trying to interview them to know why they are doing what they are doing. And then basically the guys are saying that they are doing that because of the lack of jobs, because they have to live, so crime is something for them to use. Can you put it on full screen? I don't know how to do that. Let me try. Yeah. So this actually, this guy actually grew up in the same area with these gangsters. And he's trying to explain why. Wow, so I better stop here.
Just press escape.
Right, so that was a small illustration of how poor people tend to engage more into violence because of the lack of job opportunities, and that is based on the theory of low opportunity cost. Then I would like to talk about the first type of violence, which is terrorism. And it has been noticed that most of the poor people are most likely to engage into terrorism, but there's no clear evidence that poverty leads to terrorism. Why? We'll try to see why this is not usually the case, or it's not an absolute theory to base on. For example, the Palestinian militants pay $3,000 to $5,000 to families of suicide bombers. And there are some famous quotes by politicians about terrorism, such as George Bush, which say that we fight against poverty because hope is an answer to terror. We will challenge the poverty and hopelessness and lack of education to fail governments that too often allow conditions that terrorists can seize and try to take to their advantage. And another one is by Tony Blair. In another part of our globe, there's a shadow and darkness where a third of our planet lives in poverty beyond anything even the poorest in our societies can imagine, and where a fanatical strain of religious extremism is a reason that is imitation of the true and peaceful faith of Islam, and because in the combination of this affliction, a new and deadly virus has emerged. The virus is terrorism. There's another one by Gordon Brown, which says that poverty is a breeding ground for discontent. There's a sense of injustice, and we have got to act if we are going to avoid the development of terrorist cells. Another famous one is by Obama. We know where extremists thrive, in weak states that cannot control their borders or territory or meet the basic needs of the people. And there's a video here by Bernard Kouchner, which is, who is a former French minister, which is trying to talk about poverty being a very big issue for poor countries.
I'll take your computer afterwards and I'll clean it a little bit.
Yeah, I think we can have it from here.
Can you put up the volume though?
By
maximum?
Yes, maximum. Okay, so it is a small speech by this famous French minister, which talks about poverty being a very major concern, both for developed countries and for poor countries. So,
sorry, I would just like to point out the irony of people in this position actually talking about poverty and terrorism. I don't know if you people see it, but
Yeah.
It's also an inconsistency
yeah.
with themselves.
They are part of it actually.
wow. So the presentation. The next point is about just a question of curiosity. It is true that the majority of among Islamists in Muslim world have high education degree. That is the point of the two researchers, Gambetta and Ethel. And it has also been noticed that most famous field of study for people engaged in terrorism is engineering. You have the three cases of Muhammad Atta, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and Umar Farouk. Very difficult name. Yes. And probably the two main reasons are they are there to terrorism because of the lack of job opportunities, or it's either engineers are more likely to recruit also engineers. They engage into a self-recruitment process. There's a graph here which talks about education attainment in Islamic countries, and as we can see, there's a big tendency for people to study engineering than any other subject in these Islamic countries. So
bomb making is like
Yeah. Super.
like academic.
yes. So probably they prefer engineering because of that.
Future job opportunity.
Exactly. And there's a small quote here by David Cameron, which says that there are those on the soft left who point to poverty that so many Muslims live in and say, get rid of this injustice and terrorism will end. But this ignores the fact that many of those found guilty of terrorism in the West and elsewhere have become graduate and often middle class. So it is a paradox. But
No, it's not a paradox.
it's not a paradox?
No, because they're in war with the system. It's not the like social injustice that they're fighting against. Their states are being like how's it called, invasion by other states. So
Yeah.
they're fighting against that. They're not fighting against poverty. They're not fighting for a better social status. They're fighting for their freedom.
No, I think what Joe was trying to point out was that poverty actually is one of the factors that leads to recruitment in such countries. Besides religious fanaticism and etc.
And on top of that, these guys, most of them are graduates. They may get some good jobs, but they tend to engage in terrorism. That's what I was trying to point. Right. However, it could also be that terrorist organizations select smart and educated terrorists to attack major targets. And there are some cost and benefit analysis done by these guys. Most of them prefer mission with high expected payoff, so that whenever they die, the family can benefit from that.
I like it that they actually put it in a cost benefit. No, actually, I mean.
You mean the compensation?
Yes, I haven't follow the
It's been
Well, so that was done. I mean, all we can say about terrorism. So the conclusion about terrorism is that yes, poverty is one of the causes that can lead to terrorism, but it's not the only one. It's not the only one, as you said, religion, extremism, and all these other factors. The second is about crime. A study was conducted and by these three researchers, and they found that most of the poor people spent about 80% of income on food and 10% on beer, and these tend to be very high in Tanzania. Okay, and the implication is whenever there is an increase in the price of the basic needs, the basic basic goods, these tend to lead to high amount of not only property crime but high amount of crime and all these what we can call crime in general. And as I say, it's not only that crime, poverty can lead to crime, but also crime can lead to poverty. And I say in the beginning that my focus is more from poverty to crime.
I can give you examples in Romania where crime leads to luxury and
Where
affluence. In
crime
Romania.
lead to?
I mean, there are numerous examples where crime leads to affluence.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. It's very possible. Most politicians do that.
yeah. It's not power, isn't it?
And businessmen.
Yeah.
Right, the third type of violence is domestic and gender-based violence. And there are some evidence from India where there is a strong relationship witnessing domestic violence from parents, low husband education, and socio-economic deprivation on domestic violence. And secondly, women from wealthier families are more likely to be beaten to extract larger dowries. We all know what dowries is. And
What's dowry?
Like when a woman is supposed to marry, or is given to
this
someone
kind
else,
of
if
women were
it's the material benefits she has.
They give money or property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly, the researchers found that there's no relationship between husband income and domestic violence. Maybe when the income of these guys tend to be higher, they try to abolish such kind of violence.
Okay.
But there's a positive relationship with husband education. So I don't know, how does this work? The more you tend to be educated.
I don't understand that when women from wealthier families are more likely to be
Beaten, yeah.
to extract larger dowry.
Where which one?
How does that work? Well, besides the beating, right?
Well, dowry can be, these are according to me, dowry can be jewelries, can be, how do you call it?
No, I mean, who does the beating? The husband?
Perhaps, I don't know.
I think what you mean, if somebody like marry from the rich family,
Okay.
when they bring the bride home,
Okay. They
the
beat her
husband enforce
Can be.
the wife to bring more stuff like more money and more
okay.
properties.
Well, isn't it a fixed set? I mean, I marry her and I get this.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
because
how can you extract larger by beating her up?
it's creating eventually. Recently, there was a protest in Gujarat. There's a lady was walked to police station with just underwears.
Okay.
It's a big thing in in India, and because that lady lived with husband family, the whole husband family members imposing this lady to bring dowry. The dowry you brought is not enough. That's
So
that
she must
sort of
bring more.
issues. Yeah, bring more.
She beats her and actually forces her to go
It's a
home
big
and
issue in
beats-
India.
Yes, in India, it's
Yeah.
a very big
Yeah, I
issue
don't
about
understand
domestic
because
violence.
this doesn't happen.
Yeah, there are lots of things. Yeah.
But there's a positive relationship between domestic and gender-based violence and education. I don't know why. Maybe education doesn't play a major role in reducing such type of violence.
Well, how do you get? Where did you get it? How no relationship between husband income and domestic violence?
This study was done by the authors, these researchers, Martin et al., Block and Ryan.
Yeah, might be one of the certain specific area only.
Sorry,
Where they done this research? Any country?
where did they do the research?
Yeah, research based on
India.
India.
Yeah,
Okay, so
India. So this is evidence from India. And you also have this famous Delhi rape case where a woman was raped in the bus, and she after that she passed away in Singapore. And so before even raping the lady, these gangsters actually stole some 8,000 rupees. Right.
Did I see correctly that the bus driver joined in on that previous slide?
You mean here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, who's the bus driver?
Huh?
Five men hang a bus driver.
Yeah. Can I go for it? Yeah. And then there are some evidence showing relationship between property crime and price of right. I don't know whether it is in the US or any other country. It is Bavaria. Where is Bavaria?
Bavaria.
Yes.
It's north.
Is
It's a joke.
in Germany?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Yeah. So
So this graph is done for Bavaria.
yes.
When the high
So you can see figure one, right price and property crime in Bavaria. And you have also the case of South Africa, which is one of the highest murder rate, country with a higher murder rate in the world. But there's a tendency of this rate to decline.
What rate?
what rate?
Poverty and crime. Yeah.
Murder.
Murder, yes.
Okay,
The
murder.
murder rate.
Okay.
Yes. There's actually a video by this guy trying to.
What's this?
So you have a list of the countries
Having the
Murder.
with the
murders.
murder rate.
Yeah, and America is like.
So you have Colombia, you have South Africa,
I thought
the
that
US
there's
is there.
bigger murder rate.
Where is the use?
What number is needed?
It's 24.
Oh, I thought we rised up about that.
So maybe.
Yeah, the same.
For example, the gun homicide in South Africa, 8,319.
You have to sell more guns there.
The rates per 100,000 people.
This sounds like Detroit, the whole country.
And the US is 9,960.
I think they should be higher because they have like.
The US? You think so?
Yeah, they
Depending on
have like.
circumstances, there are 4 cities that are comparable to South Africa at times. Detroit, Washington DC, LA, and Oakland.
Maybe. Well, I'm not going to show the video. As I said, the tendency of this murder rate tend to fall in South Africa. And it has been noticed that crime is not only influenced by poverty, it can also be influenced by other factors. We have the case of this famous, how do you call them? Do you know Oscar Pistorius? Yeah, the case of Oscar Pistorius in South Africa, where he actually killed
His wife.
his girlfriend. So,
And
and
that
his
influence,
well off.
not really, and that influence like shrinking.
No, in general, it's shrinking,
Okay.
but as we say, poverty is not only the cause.
Okay. So the case of Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah, such as the case of Oscar Pistorius. Some evidence, the survey by Marquand and Mossa revealed that violence was much more of a concern to the urban poor than the lack of money, trust, education, health, and nutrition. In the case of Colombia, where poor still to provide food to cash for families, and Guatemala, where poor young men join gangs movement. So, yeah, this graph shows some problem around violence, and we can see there are many of them, such as lack of money, lack of work, social rejection, illiteracy, family disintegration, possibility of going to jail, death, lot of them. And this is about the issues around poverty, lack of housing, employment, inequality in salaries and family food basket, many of them. Before the last point, this is about the following type of violence, riot. And it has been noticed that most of the poor people in poor countries riot when food prices or subsidies tend to go down. And I've chosen the case of Nigeria, where people recently, I think in 2012, there was some protest in Nigeria about the removal of, I think it's petroleum.
Fuel subsidy.
Yeah, fuel subsidy. Yeah. And I have a video for it.
Occupy Nigeria?
Sorry?
Occupy Nigeria?
Yeah, Occupy Nigeria.
Interesting.
Good.
Well, I think it's enough. This was just to show. Yeah, so that's a case of where people tend to protest because of the increase in what in the increase in the price of the good that they tend to use more often. Okay. And some evidence again, it has been shown that an increase in economic growth leads to a fall in rioting, and one of the exogenous variables used in this study is rainfall. In period of rainfall in most of the poor countries, agricultural production tend to increase, and therefore in the future there will be an increase in economic growth, and this tend to reduce such type of violence. All right, and there are three potential mechanisms. One is a poverty leads politicians to pick scapegoats. Poverty leads people to steal assets. The case of an Hindu businessman who promote riot in order to force Muslims to leave so they can take over their houses at lower cost. And also, I think you mentioned the point of Gujarat, where poverty leads to lower opportunity cost, as I mentioned before. A graph. The last one is about civil war. There are two important studies which link poverty to civil war. The first one has used the GDP per capita as a proxy for government strength. And the second one is actually a finding again, which finds that GDP per capita shows that opportunity cost for rebellion are lower for the poor. I mean, they are better off when they go to rebellion than looking for, finding jobs. So they are better off when they join a rebellion movement, something like that. A typical case can be drawn from my country, and it is called the West situation, where you have poverty and natural resources endowment, and this is really a West case of poverty. Just a small overview on the Congo. I'm sorry, I don't know how to handle this. So, because of the lack of job opportunities, poor tend to create some, rebellion, try to extract natural resources so that they can survive. And this is in the eastern part of the Congo. where there's actually a war. Yeah, so that was just a small background on the case in the Congo about poverty, which actually led to the massive creation of rebellions in the eastern part of Congo. And this is treated as a West situation.
Sorry, can I add something? That I got the impression that the way you present it, it's like shifting perspective or shifting the perspective so that it looks like it's the poor's decision to be poor. What we have here is it's like obvious exploitation. It's not poor's decision to be in the
Simplicity of factors.
Sorry?
It's what he presented is just one factor out of.
I didn't get your question.
What he's saying,
it was more like a comment.
Okay. Yes?
yeah, I agree with that as well, because the poverty is not they born with. The poverty somehow they created by the system. So that's what we need to realize as well.
I don't get
The poverty is not just happen something God created or it's just drop from the sky or something. The poverty happened due to the system.
in the country.
Anywhere in the world, because the socio-political kind of system did not manage to address the poverty. So due to that, the poverty is there and the problems are going on. And whatever the video you saw, we can see the heavy exploitation.
Yeah.
So that is also.
No, but what he was presenting was actually in this paradigm, okay, of non-working government, authoritarian mostly governments. In this paradigm, poverty, which is what leads to riots, civil war.
Yeah, we understand it. Yeah.
Or in this paradigm.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about it, isn't it?
I would actually like to agree with your point that I see this as largely structural rather than an approach perpetuated by a series of institutions that force the countries to react in these ways. And oftentimes we're like, oh, look at the terrorists, look what they're doing. Well, who's the biggest terrorist in the world?
Exactly.
It's the one flying the drones and dropping the bombs and making everyone paranoid that they might not make enough money. It's an ideology. It's an ideology and the structure as it relates to one another. But I'm curious, what alternative? I mean, is there any fight back against the structure that forces the situation, or is it largely an individual response to try and steal and distribute food on a daily basis? Because that seems like a much higher priority.
I mean, for the countries.
Yeah.
Well, there are some policy suggestions that I'll give at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, so that. Any other question? Yeah, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, these are just some evidence of the link between poverty and violence, and it is not concrete or not concrete. It is not absolute truth, but those are just potential, as we call it. is a small graph here between the relationship between GDP per capita and the probability of observing a new conflict. So you can see that it is a downward sloping curve, and when the GDP is very low, there is a higher probability of having a new conflict. And this tendency to fall as the GDP per capita is increasing for the country. Yeah, before that, we talked about also the weakness of the state, and we say that one of the measures of the weakness of the state is one of the proxy, let me say, proxy is the GDP per capita.